Hello everyone, I'm Professor Plink. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Before we get into today's video, a special shout out to my most recent super thankers, Mabbity Babbity, James Lamica, Piao Octonawa, Banana Slug 1951, and Laurel Amp 7345. Thank you all very much for your kind support of my channel. You are the atheistic abolitionists arresting the attempts of the abysmal adherents of anointed assholes. Thank you very much for helping me to continue to do what I do. And if you like what you see in this video and would like to help out the channel, make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you'll always be notified when new content comes out. And of course, like the video, maybe pop in a comment. All that goes a long way towards pleasing the YouTube algorithm, Hosanna in the highest, and keeping my channel motoring along. Now on to today's video. Today we're looking at a video from a channel called Men of God, and the proprietor of that channel is going to be attempting to disprove the notion that the Bible supports slavery. And, I mean, how can you? This is not some kind of ambiguous aspect of the scripture that could kinda sorta be interpreted in different ways. This is about as crystal clear as it gets. Leviticus 25:44. As for your male and female slaves whom you may have, you may buy male and female slaves from among the nations that are around you. You may also buy from among the strangers who sojourn with you and their clans that are with you, who have been born in your land, and they may be your property. You may bequeath them to your sons after you to inherit as a possession forever. Or Exodus 21:1. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his slave forever. What about Ephesians 6:5? Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. I mean, these are just a few of the passages that discuss slavery, and everything in the Bible that even mentions slavery condones it. Even the stuff about letting Hebrew slaves go after 7 years, well, it still allows for 7 years of slavery. That is an endorsement of it. Everything else is all about how to treat slaves, which again, in order to treat slaves well, you have to accept and condone having slaves in the first place. Not that the Bible was all that keen on treating slaves well and all.
A man strikes his slave with a rod so hard that the slave dies, he shall be punished. If, however, the slave survives for a day or two, he is not to be punished, for the slave is his property.
That's not what I'm talking about, though. That's not my thing.
But maybe Mr. Man of God here, heretofore known as MG, has found some kind of scriptural loophole that he can make a rational argument out of the idea that the Bible actually didn't support and normalize owning other people as property. So let's hear what he has to say on the matter and kick things over to him.
The Christian God's okay with slavery.
No, he's actually not, but atheists are okay with pedophilia.
What the hell was that?
Where in the hell did that come from? Claiming atheists are okay with CSA out of absolutely nowhere when we were supposed to be talking about the Bible and slavery. Right off the bat, not even 10 seconds into the video, and MG is already employing two fallacies at the same time. The first is the red herring fallacy. That's when you attempt to redirect the argument to another issue to which the person doing the redirecting can better respond. While it's similar to the avoiding the issue fallacy, the red herring is a deliberate diversion of attention with the intention of trying to abandon the original argument. I mean, this video is literally titled, "Does Christianity Support Slavery?" And right off the jump, you're redirecting the video to talk about atheists supposedly supporting CSA. A claim that we'll get into in a minute, don't you worry. But yeah, what does that accusation have anything whatsoever to do with Christianity and slavery? Nothing at all? Well then, why even bring it up? Well, that's where the second fallacy comes into play. It's the ad hominem fallacy, which sometimes gets misused or misunderstood, but it is fully in effect here. It's when you attack the person making the argument rather than the argument itself, when the attack on the person is completely irrelevant to the argument the person is making. So if atheists are arguing that Christianity supports slavery and can offer all kinds of evidence both historically and, as I did a few minutes ago, biblically, and then MG here goes on a tear about atheists being fine with CSA, therefore they're terrible people, therefore you shouldn't listen to anything they have to say, when that accusation has nothing whatsoever to do with the argument about Christianity supporting slavery. It is textbook ad hominem. So two big, blatant, and frankly idiotic fallacies in action in your first sentence. But now, even though it has nothing to do with the topic and should rightfully be excluded from the discussion, I am a bit curious how you got to the notion that all atheists, or even a sizable portion of us, are totally fine with the abuse of children. So, please, walk us through your thought process there, Lumberjack Guy Fieri.
This is well-known atheist humanist scholar Jared Anderson. In this debate, Jeff Durbin asked Anderson, is pedophilia always, in all cases, objectively wrong? Anderson, an atheist, replied, well, no, it's not objectively wrong, it's just subjectively wrong, which means in some cases it's wrong, but in some cases it's not wrong. Yikes.
Well, no, that's not what that means. Saying something is not objectively wrong, but only subjectively wrong, does not mean that it's sometimes right. It means that some people will not think it's wrong, while other people, the vast majority of people even, will think it's wrong. Subjectivity is not about things being considered okay sometimes, but about things being considered okay by some people. See, if you don't believe in objective morality, then nothing can possibly be objectively right or wrong, because objectively right and wrong doesn't exist. There's only subjective value judgments. Now, that's not to say that common ethical standards of right and wrong can't be agreed upon within a society, and that laws, norms, and sociocultural standards can't be created subjectively and then applied objectively across the board to all people. I can say that I don't think anything is objectively wrong, but that I subjectively think CSA is wrong 100% of the time, and in all cases and in all situations forever and ever, and that everyone should agree with that, and that anyone who doesn't agree with that is a monster. But I don't believe that there's some all-powerful magical being who set that rule as incontrovertible cosmic law. So that's the misunderstanding of what subjective morality means, but on to a couple other points. This guy who you talked about, Jared Anderson, I've never heard of him, despite him supposedly being a well-known atheist scholar, as you said. So I looked him up. And yeah, he's not an atheist. He does describe himself as a humanist, but he's a religious humanist. Jared is a Mormon. He's a chaplain for the military. He teaches religious studies. There's nothing about him that even hints at him not believing in God. He professes belief in God with everything he does. So, sorry, metrosexual Paul Bunyan, but Anderson isn't one of ours. He's one of yours. But even if he were an atheist, it wouldn't matter. No one atheist speaks for all atheists. Hell, no one atheist speaks even for the majority of atheists. There are plenty of atheists who believe in objective morality. Moral relativism is not a cornerstone of atheism. There are plenty of secular moral philosophies that posit a non-contextual moral framework. Take Kantianism, for instance, which applies a set of moral principles to all human beings universally, irrespective of context or situation. That is a secular moral philosophy that is objective. So there's no across-the-board atheistic moral framework that you can point to and say, hey, that framework sucks, and all or most atheists believe in it, so atheism sucks. There's only one across-the-board atheistic position: not believing in any god or gods. Now, can we get back to the slavery thing? You know, what this video was supposed to be about from the beginning?
But let's get back to the original video.
Slavery. In the Bible, Leviticus 25:44-46, it states you can buy slaves, treat them as property, bequeath them to your children, and own them for life, and this is inherently problematic.
So I think it's actually more problematic to tell an 8-year-old they can change their gender than to worry about a rule in a book Christians don't even follow anymore.
Ahem. Are you going to stop doing this anytime soon, or is this just your modus operandi through and through? And I'm sorry, but did you just say that the Bible was a book that Christians don't even follow anymore?
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
Okay, let's try to steelman MG's statement there. He was saying that the rule is what Christians don't follow anymore, not the book. Well, but it wasn't just one rule. As I said earlier, it's not like the Bible said it once, offhand, and then never dealt with the subject of slavery again. The Bible time and again condones and endorses slavery all over the place. And sure, there are lots of things in the Bible that are no longer followed by modern Christians today. Like the parts about not wearing mixed fabrics or treating women as chattel to be bartered away. I mean, from an atheistic mindset, that does throw the whole thing into upheaval. And it makes the hypocrisy downright thick enough to cut with a knife every time an apologist tries to use Bible passages as evidence for their claims. Like trying to claim homosexuality as an abomination before God because it says so in the Bible, right in Leviticus, that man shall not lie with another man as he does with a woman. Yeah, but it also says later in Leviticus that a man can buy slaves and bequeath them to his sons as property for life. Well, I don't like that part, so ignore that, but the gays are icky and that's a sin against God. I mean, at what point do you start to smell your own bullshit, Rhodey from ZZ Top?
But go off, King. So while I'll admit that the plain text reading of the verse here looks pretty bad, when you actually read it in Hebrew, it means something completely different. And we get a hint of this because other verses in the Old Testament specifically forbid stealing people. So why would it say it's okay to steal somebody and yet it's not okay to steal somebody? It means we're not fully understanding the context. Exodus 21 says, "Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him, shall be put to death."
Funny you talk about ignoring context, then fail to tell us what you think the context is that is being ignored, then go on to cite a single line from Exodus and ignore the context in which it's being used. The passage is about kidnapping free Hebrews. Everyone knows that there were different rules for dealing with Hebrew citizens as opposed to the heathens around them in the Bible. A person couldn't kidnap and enslave a free Hebrew citizen. But clearly the Bible allowed for ownership of people as property, because just 4 verses later from the one that you quoted, Exodus 21:20, anyone who beats their male or female slaves with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a direct result. But they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property. How are you going to say that the Bible says you can't own slaves using one passage, where 4 lines later it says you can beat the hell out of your slaves if you want because you own them.
So we know stealing people and owning people is specifically forbidden in Exodus 21. So what does this verse he's referencing mean? I found this great article. Let's examine the word for slaves. In Hebrew, it is the word ebed. As any Hebrew dictionary will tell you, this word can mean servant, slave, minister, advisor, or official.
So apparently you can beat your minister, advisor, or official with a rod as long as they don't die for a couple of days? Because that minister, advisor, or official is your property? Property that you can bequeath to your sons that they can then own forever? I mean, is anyone buying this flannel hairballs BS?
How do you know which of these it means at any given point? You examine the context. So there's 2 words here that can have alternate meanings, and those words are slaves and buy. And when we sub them out, we get this. As for your male and female servants whom you may have, you may hire male and female servants from among the nations that are around you. So while I'll admit the plain text reading of the verse looks bad, when we actually examine the context, it means something quite different. Exodus specifically forbids any kind of owning of people, but it does allow for the hiring of servants.
Does property mean something different in the original Hebrew? Does driving an awl through someone's ear as one does to cattle in order to mark them as one's slave and committed to lifelong servitude to their master, does that have a different meaning in the original Hebrew? Does letting a man go free but keeping his wife and children as, again, property, thereby separating a family from their husband and father, unless that father deigns to unending slavery to that master, have some kind of different context in the original Hebrew that I'm just not seeing here?
But guys, isn't it funny? When you answer these atheist objections, they just come up with another objection and another objection and another objection. And it's because it's a heart issue. And we really need to pray for these people, for God to open their eyes, because they're raging against God. They hate God. And when you deal with one objection, they'll just come up with another silly objection because they're not interested in the truth.
I'm sorry, Hagrid's hairdresser. Who's jumping from one objection to another?
But atheists are okay with pedophilia. So I think it's actually more problematic to tell an 8-year-old they can change their gender.
I've been trying to stay on topic this whole video. But if atheists do go from one objection to another, it's only because we have such a vast cornucopia of objections to the religious text, the church, the teachings, the faith, and the faithful, that it's hard to keep them all in when challenging apologists. We just have this massive abundance of rhetorical ammunition that we almost can't help but discharge it all in short order, lest we run out of hours in the day before even getting through the top-tier criticisms of your religion. But as for staying on this one topic, your refutation was pretty blatantly in bad, well, faith, no pun intended. I mean, you lock in on one single verse in the Bible, misconstrue it as forbidding slavery in all forms, which it absolutely does not, then ignore the myriad of other passages that clearly and unambiguously endorse slavery. Not indentured servitude, not hiring of personnel, not ministers or advisors, but clearly and consistently described as property, owned and controlled for life, a life that they can be beaten within an inch of if the master should choose to do so, because they are not servants, they are not ministers, they are not advisors, they are not officials. They are slaves. And I'm vacillating between thinking that you know this and are being intellectually dishonest, or thinking that you are so lost in the reeds of religious indoctrination that you've actually convinced yourself that your own argument holds water, and blinded yourself to the mountains of evidence right there in your own holy book that contradicts everything that you just said. But either way...
Everything that guy just said is bullshit. Thank you.
And so that is where we'll leave things for today. So, thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like this video, comment, and subscribe so you'll always be notified when a new video comes out. Until next time, I'm Professor Plink reminding you to keep striving for greater understanding. It's the best way to get wherever you want to go.